Hey, what is up guys, I'm KBHD here, and when Apple announced the new MacBook Pros, they also pretty much killed all hope for another cinema display when they dropped this alongside it, the new LG 5K UltraFine display, and then they said they'd be selling it alongside the new Macs in the Apple Store. So okay, we want to give it a chance. So is this, if I just cover up the LG logo, is this thing a good enough replacement for the Apple Cinema Display legacy? Is this good enough? Well, I've been using it for a couple weeks, and my answer is, it depends on who you are. Let me explain. So I'm coming from a pair of Asus 32-inch 4K monitors. I've always been a dual monitor person, and this LG 5K display is awesome. I mean, it's objectively, undeniably awesome. It's a smaller 27-inch display at 5K, so 5120 by 2880, which gives you about 218 pixels per inch, which is awesome for a desktop display. And it also has the wider P3 color gamut, so colors really pop, and 500 nits of brightness, so it's vivid, contrasty, and clear. There's a 1200:1 contrast ratio. So it's just obviously a really great looking panel. That's what you like to see. The specs on the site also say it's anti-glare, but the Asus was way more matte than this. This is much more glossy, so if you position yourself near windows, you'll have to know where the lights are gonna be behind you, but once you get used to that, that's pretty much fine. And then the actual hardware around the monitor itself is pretty good. I mean, some people have said it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you got a height adjustable stand here. It's tilt adjustable too. One thing it doesn't do is swivel. I think it would have been super easy to put a swivel right here in the base, but it doesn't do that. And then you can see the bezels, obviously. Some people have been talking about how it's not the prettiest thing in the world. I'd agree, it's got a little bit of a bigger forehead than a chin, but to be honest, I barely noticed that after like a week of using the monitors. You're not really looking at the bezels anymore after like a couple of days. But the larger top bezel does also hold the webcam and microphone, which are also actually pretty good. And this guy also has speakers right on the bottom. The grill is on the bottom too. They're downward facing. They sound just like the iMac speakers. It's pretty comparable to that. So overall, it's built pretty well. I mean, it's not metal like you see the exposed metal on the iMac. You get metal down here on the stand, but once you get into the plastic of the tops, it doesn't quite feel the same, but you're not really paying that much attention to that when the panel looks so good. The rest can be kind of forgiven. So the other thing is this monitor is also made for Mac. They're selling it alongside the Macs. It's marketed next to the MacBook Pro. What does that mean for it? Well, first of all, there are no buttons anywhere on the outside of this thing. There's no knobs or anything for turning it on or off, no power button, nothing. It all goes through the software in macOS 10. So any colors you want to change, any resolution you want to adjust, any brightness changes, they will all happen through the software just because that's the way it works with Mac. So there's that, and then of course there is the USB Type-C, the one single Thunderbolt 3 cable that I'm plugging this into my MacBook Pro with. That's a pretty big deal. So through this one cable, you're getting video going from the computer to the monitor, and you're also getting power going back from the monitor to the computer. So it's actually charging my MacBook Pro with the same cable that's doing the video, which is pretty awesome. It saves you a port. You don't have to plug into the wall anymore. For the most part, that's really convenient. And then around the back, there's a 3-port USB Type-C hub on the back of the monitor. It's not full Thunderbolt 3, and it's not even fully powered USB 3.1, but it's a couple of solid USB 3 ports for stuff like media card readers, webcams, etc. And this again frees up ports on the laptop. If you normally put, say, an SD card reader in this laptop, you can now put it on the back of the monitor. So overall, it seems like an ideal package. You know, it's one laptop, one display, one cable between them, nice and clean, and you get way more working area in this glorious 5K LG panel. Looking good, but obviously, it's not quite perfect for everyone. If you're a person who doesn't have a 2016, 2017 MacBook Pro, then this is probably not a good pick. Because even with the right adapter, the highest resolution you can get out of this monitor, even with a Mac Pro, is about 4K with one cable. So not ideal. It's still gonna be a beautiful, colorful, contrasty monitor, but it's only 4K and you bought a 5K display. You might as well get your money's worth. And then number two, if you edit video on your laptop, which again, not a lot of people do, but if you're in that category, you might not be able to get away with using just the power cable from the monitor. Here's a fun story I tweeted about already. When I was editing video in Final Cut Pro with this MacBook Pro plugged into the monitor getting battery, it says it's charging the whole time. And while I'm editing, the battery life still decreases from 100% going down while it's still plugged in. So I'm editing, it says it's plugged in and charging, and I get to 85% and 75% and 50%. I get all the way to rendering the whole video out, and right when the video's done rendering, my laptop says it has 4% battery, even though it's still plugged in and charging. Now obviously that's not a normal use case. Most people aren't editing heavy, high-resolution videos on their MacBook Pros. I get it, but you should know that this monitor is not delivering necessarily the entire 85 watts of power necessary to keep this thing fully charged. It even says 85 watts on the site, and when I go go into System Profiler, it says it's getting 85 watts, but Dave2D tested it, and he tweeted at me that he tested it, and he was getting something more like 60 to 62 watts. So again, if you're editing with video, you're probably gonna have to unplug one of the monitors and plug in the power brick to get your full power. But again, that's not your normal customer. If your setup is near a router, like within 2 to 3 feet of a Wi-Fi router, you probably want to temporarily avoid this monitor. Due to poor shielding, there's been reports of flickering and weird non-responsiveness and rebooting of the monitor when it's really close to a router. Now, I don't have that problem. Mine's way on the other side over there, but if you have a router that's really close to your setup, probably going to want to avoid that. LG says they're working on updating this version to have improved shielding, and they're even okay to retrofit these monitors that don't have good shielding with new ones, but until then, I just give it a second because that doesn't seem like a very good property to have. But even after all of that, other than that, the monitor right here is really good. It's amazing. I wish I could say it's like an Apple logo away from being like the next cinema display, but obviously it's not quite there. My setup, what I'm using is I have 2 of these attached to the MacBook Pro that I'm using all 3 screens full time, and even I've had little blinking problems that a reboot eventually fixed, but it's like I shouldn't even be having these problems. So I think if you have a MacBook Pro, a new MacBook Pro, and you just want one monitor to plug in with one cable to just sit at your desk and just get way more real estate, then this is an awesome pick. The panel is amazing, it's way more pixels, it looks fantastic, and it's just excellent for people who are in that sort of a casual user. Even though you're buying a MacBook Pro, you can still get a lot casually out of this monitor. But if you fit into any of those buckets of people I described earlier, then you may want to hold off on this, or maybe look at the 4K version. So okay, overall conclusion is the panel obviously is really good. It's beautiful, vivid, vibrant, love it. The hardware surrounding the panel is sort of hit or miss for some people. It's all right. You know, I like the understated design, but some people might not like it as much. And then the compatibility, or just knowing if you fit in those buckets of people I talked about, is what's going to decide if you buy this monitor or not. So that's pretty much it. You could say it's ultra fine. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.